In this video, I'm going to show you how to find the perpendicular bisectors of a triangle. A perpendicular bisector is a segment that goes through the midpoint of a side and is perpendicular to that side. So you could use a compass, protractor, ruler, any of those tools would work for finding the perpendicular bisectors, but for this I'm going to use a ruler and a note card. The first thing to notice here is that a perpendicular bisector is a segment that goes through the midpoint of a side. So I'm going to use my ruler to measure each of the sides, and then I'll take half of that, and that'll tell me where the midpoint of that side is. Then I'll use my note card, which will have a right angle on it, and from there I can find a line that's perpendicular to that midpoint. So first thing is I'm going to measure this side of my triangle, and I see that it's just a little bit beyond 14 centimeters. So half of 14 is 7. So I'm going to go just a hair above 7 centimeters. So there's my midpoint. Then I'm going to use my note card. My note card has a right angle on it. And from a right angle, I know I'll have perpendicular lines. So I'm going to line up the bottom of my note card with that side of my triangle. And I'll make sure that it's also lined up with my midpoint here. And I'm just going to draw in that line segment that connects the midpoint to that side of my triangle. That's perpendicular. And since this was a midpoint, I know that this side of my triangle has been divided into two congruent parts. Whatever the measure of this segment here is, this will be the same. Now I'm going to go and do this for the other two sides of my triangle. Going to measure this side. This side looks to be right around 9.5 centimeters. So half of 9 is 4.5, and then half of a half is a quarter. So I'm going to go to 4 3/4. 4 3/4. I'm going to put my midpoint right there. Go back to my note card again because I've got a right angle there, so I know that a right angle I'm going to get perpendicular lines. Line that up. Let me see my midpoints. And I will draw that line segment in. Now again, since this is a midpoint, I know I'm going to get two congruent parts. I've divided this side of my triangle into two congruent parts. So I'm going to mark those as congruent. Now the last side over here, I measured this side and it looks to be about 12.5. So half of 12 is 6, and then half of a half is a quarter. So I'm going to go to 6 1/4, right about here. That's my midpoint. Go back to my note card, line that up with that side of the triangle and with my midpoint. Okay. And again, since this is a midpoint, that means that these two segments in the triangle, I've divided that side into two congruent parts. So this part here will be congruent to this part here. And then also you'll notice that the three perpendicular bisectors all meet together at one point. Okay? Those are all going to meet together at the circumcenter. All right? And the circumcenter will always be inside of the triangle. Also, it's worth noting that the circumcenter is the equidistant from each of the vertices in the triangle. So if I were to draw a line from my circumcenter to the vertex here, and another one from the circumcenter to the vertex up at the top, and one more from the circumcenter to the vertex over here, each of those line segments that I would draw in would be the same distance. The circumcenter will always be equidistant from each of the vertices of your triangle.